Well, thank you very much for all being here. Welcome to Let's Talk EDI with me, Haleema Latif, Candidate Network Manager at Inclusive Recruiting. It's a pleasure to have you all here today. We're going to do a little Q&A session, and we're going to take it. I'm going to ask a question, and we're going to go around, and you can just share your views and your opinions about that sort of a particular question and answer it that way. I will start just by let's do introductions first, I guess. So as you know, I'm Haleema Latif, Candidate Network Manager at Inclusive Recruiting. And my role is about building an inclusive network of diverse talent, where we network, meet, and provide training, mentoring, and job search support. So that's a little bit about me. I'd like to just go around and just hear from you. Obviously, just introduce your name and what you do and what your job role is. So who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Go for it.
So I'm Priya Cinar. I am the Director of Operations and Recruitment at Inclusive Recruiting. So I wear a number of different hats. So operations from a business perspective in terms of processes, procedures, and systems governance. And from a recruitment perspective, I manage the recruitment team of consultants and assistants and client relationship managing and taking our clients through EDI within the recruitment process and reaching a wider diverse pool of candidates they may not normally be able to reach, and the reasons why.
Thank you very much, Priya. Daniel, which one? Daniel,
Yep.
Go for it.
Yep. Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Chery. I am the EDI, the head of EDI. I deliver the workshops for Quality, Diversity, Inclusion, DEI, EDI, DIA. Whatever way the acronym is asked for, this is what we deliver. So we do the EDI foundations, which is very much about understanding what equality, diversity, inclusion is, looking at the why, looking at our bias, our privilege, and then we end with looking at equity. So I deliver that to a large number of corporate organizations. We then also go into what is known as our inclusive recruiting process, which it's a deeper dive into making sure that we are teaching organizations, companies how to inclusively recruit using equality, diversity, as inclusion as a basis, and how they can become much better at delivering and recruiting inclusively, supporting the organization as we do.
Thank you so much. Tom.
Hi, I'm Szczecinski. I'm the recruitment consultant at Inclusive Recruiting. My main role and aim is to help our amazing candidates find their dream jobs with some of our amazing clients we've been working with, and support them on their journey to progress their career. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what I'm responsible for.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. So are we ready for the Q&A session? Yeah. Fab. So my first question is, so let's talk about, what does EDI mean to you? So what does equity, diversity, and inclusion mean to you? Whoever wants to go first, that's absolutely fine.
I'll go.
Yeah.
So for me, EDI really is the core and foundation of everything that both personally and at work. Being a diverse person myself, of Asian background, it's really important for me to educate and talk to the younger generation coming up. So for example, my nieces, my nephews, or even within our organization, we have some Gen Z colleagues and talking through the sort of experiences that they're having within the workplace, as well as personally, and how that impacts your view of your working environment, as well as your personal life. It's about feeling included and belonging. We say EDI, but for me, it's EDIB. So that belonging is really, really important. You can be in an organization and feel, that you are being included, your views are being heard, but what if I don't truly belong?
Yeah.
And that's the piece for me that tends to be missing. And for me, this is the first organization, hand on heart, that I've ever worked in where I feel that I truly, truly 100% belong. And I can be authentic and I can be myself every single day and not have to mask parts of my you know, my personality or who I am, and it's accepted.
Yeah.
And I can say what I'm feeling and not be judged. And for me, that's so important, because every time I've gone into other organizations or friends groups, even when you meet people, you're almost not your 100% self, right? You hold a little bit back.
Yeah.
And until you sort of get comfortable, oh, can I say that? I've been enough. Maybe I'll pass my probation and maybe I'll say that. But it should be about belonging from the day that you join, for me.
Do you think that in terms of, you know, you being yourself, you talked about you, and I totally agree with you. I think it's quite key. In fact, I was talking about this with someone else last week. But do you really think you can be your 100% all the time at work or even in your social groups? Do you think that's possible?
If you're in an organization or you're with people,
Yeah,
where you really do know that, you know, you truly belong and they have, you know, similar understanding of you.
Yeah.
They don't have to agree. You know, I have a very different, you know, friends groups.
Yeah.
Very, very different. And, you know, my family, for example, don't agree with what I do. We have very heated debates.
yeah,
You know, as an example, you know, my cousin thinks positive discrimination in job descriptions is fantastic and we should be doing it like America is, whereas my view is totally different.
Yeah.
But I think it brings that real challenging conversation of looking at things from a different viewpoint.
Yeah.
And you're able to increase your knowledge, but as well as understand where is someone else coming from, how are they viewing something, and maybe let me look through their lens and what is their lens saying. But yeah, whether or not you can be your authentic self from day one is a question you've asked me.
No, it's more about, can you be authentic? Can you be yourself 100% of the time? For example, at work or even at home, like in a certain situation, do you think it's that?
At work, I mean, in the organization I'm in, yes.
Yeah.
In previous organizations, 100% no.
No. So yeah, sometimes then.
I'd be very careful when I would be myself 100%, because it could hinder my progression.
Yeah.
It could change the way I'm viewed.
Yeah, sure. It's hard. Yeah, fair enough. Sorry, a bit of an extra question there for you, Priya. I was just interested. So yeah, in terms of our first question, what does EDI mean to you? Daniel, would you like to go next?
Yeah, and I really enjoyed Priya's answer in the whole sense of belonging, but where I was coming from in addition to that is that whole word of inclusion. We spend a lot of time excluding people, and the thing that I really enjoy about the word equality, diversity, inclusion is it's finding that way to bring people in, looking at differences, looking at the challenges that people go through, to look at commonalities and say, how can I make people feel included in this workplace, in the job that they're in, rather than actually looking at what often happens is we want people to be the same as us. So everyone's got to look exactly the same and be a certain way and fit. The thing around inclusion is, what is it that's different about these people? What is it that I bring to the table that's very different? So having a visual impairment, being a black man, I've worked in places where there's been a glass ceiling. I've applied to roles, I've been in management in different places, and what I've learned and I'm owning it as a black man in management, I've had to move to different organizations to be able to climb. Whereas some of my other counterparts who've got more privilege than me, they've been able to go up the ladder straight. And the thing around inclusion is actually creating a straight ladder without that glass ceiling, and including and looking at people's differences, and working really, really hard. So what it means to me is working hard at making the spaces I engage in really safe for other people to be, to use the phrase that you both used already, to be their authentic self. And can you be your authentic self at all times? No, unfortunately, I think a lot of the baggage that we come with means that we don't. I know that the experiences that we had means that it impacts on the way that we present ourselves when we come to other places, when we go to places for the first times, and we believe those judgments are going to be made about us. So I think having joined inclusive recruiting and learning the way I'm learning at the moment, I think my inclusion lens has grown and it's getting bigger. So I'm really enjoying it at the moment.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think it's hard. It's a challenge to be to feel like you belong all the time, to be that authentic self all the time. I think it's challenging, and even in a place where you might feel like you can reach limits, but depending on certain situations, even in that organization, I think there's always maybe an element, maybe in a meeting or something, where you might not be your authentic self for whatever reason. Maybe you don't feel comfortable in the group that you in, or whatever it is. So I do definitely think, you know, you can to a certain limit, but there might be situations where you can't be that 100%. So that's what I think. But thank you very much, Daniel. Dom.
Well, for me, you know, working for inclusive recruiting certainly allowed me and enabled me to be my true self. Coming away from companies and businesses I have worked where I certainly wasn't able to. You know, there were certain things I had to adhere to, and you know, I wasn't able to challenge certain situations and certain discussions, which it's also dominated by the fact that, you know, growing up in Poland until I was 21, I have not been exposed to a lot of the biases or a lot of the prejudices or behaviors that obviously I have been exposed living in UK for the last 18 years. You know, from what EDI means to me is, you know, making sure that we are getting rid of certain behaviors, we are eradicating certain behaviors from the society, making sure that, you know, we are not looking at people through our own biases, but also challenging people's biases towards others. For me, it's, you know, eventually, you know, adding justice. You know, like we always look at the picture with the fence, removing that fence, removing the box, making sure that everyone gets a fair, same chance without any barriers, without any obstacles. Everyone is on the same playing field. And I know that, you know, it sounds maybe like a cliche from, you know, to a lot of people, but from how I see it, you know, I'm still on a massive learning journey. And for me, it's, you know, it's an eye-opening and sort of, you know, thought-provoking subject to, you know, to keep on sort of, you know, digging more into all the aspects of EDI and justice in the society.
Yeah, thank you, Dom. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love it. I love the fact that you brought in this whole element of, you know, creating that the justice piece, basically. And I think you talked about a journey of learning, and I think we're all on a journey of learning, you know, and I don't think, no matter how many books you read or whatever, EDI is a topic that you can talk about and learn. Every time I learn or go to a training, I always feel like there's still so many questions and buts and so much more to learn, that actually even, you know, a week's worth of training is just not going to be enough. It's going to be an area that you just continually keep growing on. So yeah. But yeah, so thank you very much for that. Let's go on to question number 2. I feel like a bit of a game show here. So you all work in different areas, as you've mentioned, and I just want to know, in your view, why is it important for you to have an EDI lens with the work that you do? And maybe you can talk about it in terms of the work you do at Inclusive Recruiting, or maybe in terms of why it's important for someone who's in recruitment, for example, to have an EDI lens on when they're doing recruitment. So yeah, should we? Yeah, go for it, Daniel.
Yeah, I again, as being the lead, one of the lead facilitators for EDI, because the reason why I feel it's so important to have this lens is because we can exclude. If I'm not consistently updating, as you just said, my lens in EDI and consistently reading, consistently learning, then what I'm doing is I can potentially stagnate other companies that I'm working with or people that I'm around, my colleagues in the workforce. One of the things that we've thrown it out as a little bit of a joke, but we throw out microaggressions for everybody, and it's that challenge of actually acknowledging that we are saying something and checking ourselves which might not be as inclusive as it should be. Yeah. It's challenging ourselves. So the importance of having that lens is that we become examples. We speak about being a glass door. So whatever it is that we are doing externally, we should be doing internally. So we are consistently practicing to become those experts in EDI, so that people say, not only do you speak about it and teach it, actually I can see that your ethos, the way you behave, and your entire culture as an organization is very much entrenched and embedded within EDI. That's my belief, and it's my learning. So it's not only in work, it's externally as well, because I don't want people to say, actually, Dan, that wasn't very inclusive, was it?
Yeah.
And if they do, actually be able to pause and say, you know what, apologize quickly. I'm going to improve almost instantaneously because I'm a human being and I will make mistakes.
Yeah. I think that's quite key. As you were talking, it kind of made me feel that actually having these labels, we talk about labels, well, I talk about labels sometimes in certain friends groups or whatever, but having these labels like being an expert puts so much pressure on one, right? Because then people externally think you're the person with all the knowledge. Yet we talk about EDI as an area that we're always learning, and we're humans, and we talk about bias, but we are again human, right? So sometimes we say things and we don't realize, or sometimes our experience or knowledge is limited. So when someone says something, you realize at that point that actually, you know, that's wrong. It's understanding how to then manage that and learning from that experience. So it, once again, it can be challenging as being, you know, that expert in EDI to know it and say it all right all the time. So yeah, thank you. Dom, would you like to go next? Oh, you're on mute, my dear.
Sorry.
That's all right.
So why is it important for me? For me, you know, it's important to look at people without my bias clouding my judgments when I'm speaking mainly to the candidates, and, you know, always putting myself in candidates' shoes. And, you know, as I said, I'm still learning on this. And for example, you know, having an understanding that not every candidate has got access to the same resources. Not every candidate the English is their first language. I mean, English is not my first language, but having that understanding and eradicates that thought process and that way of thinking when I'm speaking to these people who are trying to make a change in their life and trying to progress their career. I mean, you know, I work very closely with Priya, and, you know, she's been mentoring me over the last 10 or 11 months. And, you know, we had numerous conversations around, you know, what things I should focus on and what I should look at. We had recently a situation where a client was asking a candidate to print something out 15 minutes before an interview to spot check errors. And the challenge back was, you know, from my line manager, what if the candidate hasn't got a printer? You know, it's always, you know, having this understanding. And then, you know, gladly, you know, both Priya and Daniel are on call today, but I you know, I spend a lot of time with Daniel also, you know, learning about all the ins and outs of EDI, having an understanding and you know, understand that not everyone has got the same opportunity at the, you know, at the start. You know, a lot of us are never had that sort of head start in life. So yeah, it's just, you know, putting that lens on that not everyone have the same predisposition, you know, to start their journey with, and having this understanding. Whereas before, you know, I openly say I was very judgmental probably when I was doing recruitment in my previous roles, but learning about, you know, biases, learning about equity, diversity and inclusion, and learning about justice, learning about equal opportunities for people has made me a better person, but also allowed me to look at people in a different way and helping them.
Yeah, thank you very much. I loved your passion there. Very well done. And it's true. It's hard because, you know, it's natural for us to have those biases or to judge, but the continuous learning is the key thing so that we are aware. So the first thing is being aware, right? So as we're more aware, we can treat individuals like candidates like individuals and really have that understanding from their perspective, and also just having that candidate experience where, you know, we're treating people as humans, one-to-one basis, and not, you know, anything else, to really understand them and support them in what we do. So thank you very much, Dom. Priya.
You know, I would echo with what both Daniel and Dom has said, but I think what's really important for me is that, you know, in any business you tend to focus on the client a lot, and Haleema, you'll agree, being the candidate network manager, the candidate for me is just as important, if not more important, than the client and their journey and their experience through the process. And being a diverse candidate myself, whenever I talk to candidates, I do put myself in their shoes, and look at, you know, why are they you know, why have they picked up the phone to ourselves as an example? You know, why inclusive recruiting? What is the reason that you've come to us against, you know, all these other agencies that are out there, and really understanding, you know, what opportunities they want to go for, what are their barriers, what are their challenges, and how can I support them in getting there? And a lot of the conversations that I have with candidates is around coaching and mentoring. It's around, you know, candidates saying, oh no, I don't think that's for me, I would never go for that. And I'd be there going, no, you know, it's that imposter syndrome where actually, no, you know, let me look at your experience, let me tell you why I feel that you are for this, and I'll take them through that. And if you don't want to go for it, that's absolutely fine, but I need you to see your potential. And not think that, oh no, I'm in this box, because you've been put in this box for so many years by, you know, your previous experiences with other organizations, etc. But actually you can break out of that. And it's giving them that guidance. And this is where we really come in, you know, yourself, myself, you know, inclusive recruiting, and really giving them that support that they need, that guidance that they need, and always being at the end of the phone. So, you know, I pride ourselves at inclusive recruiting in, we're not transactional. Not a transactional agency. It's not a case of here's 10 CVs, tell us who you want to see. It's numerous conversations with the candidates to make sure that this is right for them, but also challenging the hiring managers. But also, you know, if for whatever reason the candidates aren't successful, it's what can we do to help you? That feedback is so important for us to go through, and that is so crucial, so that they are prepared for their next interview, so that they can prepare themselves better, and where can we support them? So that EDI lens is not just important to explain to the clients or the hiring managers, but also the candidates, so that we represent them, and we'll represent them, I feel, better than another agency will, and really hopefully get them that, you know, job that they really want, and that career progression, but also stay in touch with them. It's not just about placing them for me. It's, how are you feeling? How is it going? You know, have you got any challenges? You know, just last week, I'll give you an example. I was visiting a candidate that I placed in a role, and they were telling me that they were feeling a bit lonely, a bit isolated in their role, because, you know, was actually an EDI role, an EDI lead, which is a very challenging role in itself. Being in an organization where, you know, you're going to have your good days, right, where everything's happening, but you're going to have the days where everything feels like an uphill challenge and an uphill battle. But they didn't have a network around them of people that they could talk to. So, you know, I walked away from that meeting and rang up all the other EDI leads that I knew that I had placed, and created a network. And the funny thing was that Vanessa, who's our CEO, was listening to me and went, can I join? Because I sometimes feel alone. I want to be part of that network. And I think that's where we differ, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was going to say. This is why we're different. And it's not about, like you say, I always say this as well. Yes, we are an organization. This is not our organization. We're salaried individuals. We need our salary to live. But it's much more than that for us. And, you know, same example. I mean, I literally, yesterday, somebody who I supported, registered them as a candidate, didn't put them for a role through us, but obviously coached and mentored them in that conversation. And yesterday she came back to me after all these months. I mean, I don't, you know, I do it as my role, my passion, everything else. So it's not something I'm tied with. But, you know, for someone to come and reach out to me out of the blue after all these months and show her appreciation of the support I gave her, that little thing, sentence or word or whatever I may have said actually touched her, for her to have now reached her goal, and she's got a new job, not through us, but she's got it, which is fantastic, but through the support that I gave her, and actually, you know, then saying, you know, I really appreciate it, and actually this is who I'm working for. I'd really like to introduce you to our organization. And so it's all about networking and supporting each other, and not only the fact that we've got to meet our KPIs, for example, because that is important, but EDI is a bigger topic. I always say it's not about my role, our organization, it's a bigger thing. If we can support each other, we'll be able to create this change that we're out to do. You know, I always talk about creating that change at leadership levels and having more representation at leadership levels. So if we create this network and this engagement opportunities through individuals, through us, we will be able to create that change. So it's just so nice that we're all on the same page. And so, yeah, that's lovely. Daniel, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, on a day where it's 39 degrees outside, that the comments that Priya made gave me a bit of a chill, because it's so excitable to be in an organization that actually really looks and dives deep into supporting people and diverse people. And I think that whole let's just on the back of a phone call and somebody feeling a little bit isolated and said, let's get in contact with other people. It's one of our values, isn't it, about being innovative? And I think it's really excitable to be working here and have the opportunity to be, number one, growing my lens, to be teaching other organizations, and a number of corporate organizations that we're teaching this to. You know, they say if you throw a pebble into a pond, it ripples out, and the ripple effect that we are having as an organization of inclusive recruiting, I think is outstanding. So I just wanted to name that.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, since I've been here, I can, you know, the experience tells me, and my own experience as well, is that often what people need is people from diverse background. They want someone to talk to because they don't have that support mechanism. And you actually just spending a bit of time with them and having that conversation, I hear it, you know, that it means so much to people, and it's just so important that we can do that. And it makes a difference. So yeah, anyway, we can probably go on about this topic. So let's go on to the next question. Let me get my question, give me a second. So yeah, question number 3. So let's talk about some of the challenges. You know, what are some of the challenges you face maybe in your career, in the work that you do, or maybe just generally personally, if you want to touch on that as well. So yeah, Dom, would you like to go first? Oh, Priya, were you going to go first?
I'll go.
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, it kind of follows on from what we've already been talking about.
Yeah.
In terms of the challenges, you know, I was talking about EDI leads. We do EDI daily. We talk about equity, diversity, inclusion, belonging to all our clients on a daily basis. And I guess, you know, it's very rewarding when you can see a positive step forward, but it's equally frustrating and challenging when, you know, they're not quite seeing it, or there are too many, no, we do it this way, no, we're not changing this. Which, you know, I understand processes, procedures, governance, etc. sometimes, but if you truly want to be an inclusive employer, truly want to be an equitable employer and really understand EDI, you do need to be able to maneuver and move. Otherwise you are going to get what you keep getting. And if that is the profile that we always applies to us, is the profile of a white male, middle-aged, if you don't change something, that's what you'll continue to get. And that could be things as simple as, you know, you advertising guardian jobs and charity jobs as an example. That's a certain demographic that you are going to attract. You need to open up your net wider to attract that diverse candidate. But that's just, you know, that's just the beginning, right? So for me, when I look at recruitment, you could be the best talent acquisition team in the world. You can put your adverts absolutely everywhere and get 90% worth of diverse applicants applying. But what it comes down to is the hiring manager, right? Because you've got all these applicants coming through, but if you're still converting, you know, as an example, what you always hire, so white male, white female, middle-aged, with a degree from a university that nearly everyone else in your organization has, then that's what you're still going to end up with. So nothing's really changing. So it's not just about the attraction. The attraction, yes, is a piece, but there's no point spending all that money and doing employee branding and attraction if you're not going to train or look at your bias, your privilege, what is intersectionality, what does all of that mean, and how does it come into your employee life cycle? You can't transform your organization just by hiring, for example, ourselves, you know. So my biggest challenge when I talk to organizations is it tokenism? Because if it's tokenism, you don't need us. You can do that all on your own and be as biased as you like through your recruitment process and hire a Black, Asian, minority, ethnic. But all that will happen is a revolving door effect, meaning within 3 to 6 months, they're going to leave because they don't feel included, they don't belong, and you're just going to be back where you started from. So you really, you really need to look at your organization as a whole and really look at, where do we need education? Where do we need some help, support, training, coaching? And EDI it's a journey, right? We've talked about this all the way through. It's learning. It never stops. It's not going to get solved in my lifetime, the next generation, or the generation after. It's here forever. And we're learning as we go along, and things are going to change. Gen Z are teaching us things that, 20 years ago, I never knew. I'm hearing lots of different phrases, about orientation and, where if you ask my parents, they'll be like, what are you talking about? There's male and female. So the world is changing, the world is moving, and it's not whether or not you agree with it. You don't need to agree with it. You just need to get on board with it. Understand where the next generation is coming from, because they are your next CEOs, they are your next, COOs, etc. And understand them is what I would say. And that's the biggest challenge I have, where organizations or clients can be too rigid around this is the way we do it, this is the way we've always done it, we're not changing. Then why are you on the phone to me? Would be my question.
And it takes bravery to have that conversation, because someone's come to you and reached out to you on X, Y, Z, to then turn around and say, well, it needs to happen like this if you want whatever the objective is, and if you can't do that, then well done to you and those that actually are brave enough to kind of challenge and question clients, because that's key, right, in terms of who we are. So Daniel.
I'll go.
Oh, Dom.
I'm happy to go. So
I saw both come off mute there.
my outlook is quite simplified, especially the question is about dealing with challenges you face, especially dealing with clients and generally when you work with. For me, it's about, quite simply put forward, having the clients understanding the needs of the candidate. And a lot of times we face that challenge. I cannot speak from sort of Daniel's perspective, where he deals with workshops, but from my perspective, when I'm dealing with client, it's them understanding that what we touched up on the previous point, not everyone has got the same journey, not everyone has got the same access to the same resources, not everyone's English is their first language. And we've had that time and time again. It's about them understanding that they do have a bias. It's them understanding that they need to educate themselves and potentially the teams around them, or their hiring managers, to try to eradicate the bias. It's, for example, situation where a hiring manager is requesting only male candidates. It's a situation where we've got candidates that not necessarily look or sound like you, and you say, I had problems understanding, but did you do anything to adjust to that candidate, to have an understanding of that candidate, or the candidate spoke too fast? I mean, did you do anything to aid that candidate in their journey? What is their understanding of you as an employer if they will receive a feedback, we didn't like that person because they spoke too fast? I mean, that kind of feedback is as good as no feedback. Giving someone that kind of depth of feedback, or they don't fit within our culture. Why? Because they don't look and they don't sound like you. It's those challenges going back to the clients, back to the hiring managers, not necessarily to the CEO or to the directors, but to those hiring managers at that sort of level. Is, are you not offering this person an opportunity because you don't feel that they will fit in within the group? of the people that you already have within your team, for example? Are you afraid that one person who is of diverse background might start causing some trouble in your organization? Having them understand that, you know, these people are hardworking, they deserve their chance. Just because they potentially look or sound different to you, that doesn't mean that they can't do the job or excel at the job that people in your team are already there. You know, it's having that understanding that we all deserve that opportunity. We all have that justice. You know, we all should stand the same chance.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think sometimes it's also when you talk about those clients who may come back and sort of say, you know, this person doesn't fit culturally, or you know, it's a strong one, but we're going to go with this one, and you can kind of see why. And I think sometimes it's going back and educating clients and people about the fact that, okay, let's just take a step back and think about, what is your service, what is your product, for example. You know, when you're recruiting, think about, are you able to reach out and get this perspective from all of your customers for that service or delivery, right? So maybe that person will be able to give you that perspective and that innovation that you haven't reached out to in terms of your service and delivery. So it's that education piece, which I guess is something that you do with the work that you do when you're faced with those sort of challenges, which is great, which I think also leads on to very nicely in terms of the educational piece, which goes on to Daniel. So look forward to hearing from what Daniel has to say about this.
And thank you, Haleema and Priya and Dom, because the bit that's so exciting about this is that it follows a path.
Yeah.
And we're asking about the challenges, and often we've got the luxury of being in the same office, so you hear some of the conversations. As Dom said earlier on, we travel, we have conversations. So it's almost you're teaching and reflecting on what you've learned and what you're delivering to corporations and organizations, and then you're hearing, hold on a minute, this organization needs to have our EDI foundation. They need to have our inclusive recruiting, because the process that we're talking about stops them from having these revolving doors. It means that they start off the process of, we need to look at ourselves. The challenges that we have in these workshops is, we know best. And it's echoing what Priya said, is very much echoing what Dom said. It's like, I don't need this. But the question is, so if you don't need this, you're booking us for tokenism. It's when they get into the workshops and they're like, it's like you see the epiphany moments. So with certain exercises you do, you see the penny dropping and people going, it is about me. It is about this organization, that I can actually have an impact and change in the cultures and the norms and the processes, so that when people are applying for the post, we are looking for the added value. What does this person bring, as opposed to, let's keep doing the same thing and looking for a different result. They call that the definition of insanity. And companies that actually inclusively recruit and get involved with the workshops that we deliver, that use us for their recruitment, actually benefit from the process and the journey and that consistent learning. They benefit from it because they started the journey with us and they stay on the journey with us. You've got some amazing candidates that will keep coming back to us, and then they recommend him and they're saying, actually, I had a great experience doing the workshop over here. I've moved the organization, you need it. And that's the learning. But the bit where it always starts off as the challenge is, yeah, I don't really need this. And you sit there in this, I've been doing a hiring managing role. I've been in HR for 20 years, and I've had that in some of the workshops where people have said, I've been doing this for a long time, and they're very cynical, brave in the first session, and at the end of it, they're like, wow, I've learned. And the words they write in the Slido breakout is, wow, I've checked myself. And that's what we're looking for, people to check where they are at, so that they can change the norms in their practices. So yeah, it's interesting that the challenge is, sometimes you listen to people and you think, you need the foundation learning, you need the inclusive recruiting workshop, because if you had the workshop, you wouldn't be saying half the things that they're saying. But again, can organizations book us in, and if they got the time, they need to make the time. It's really important that they dedicate it.
Yeah, fine. And in terms of, obviously, you've talked a little bit about generally, what about your sort of key sort of challenges that you face? I mean, you've talked about a little bit about those individuals who are on the workshop. Do you face any challenges other than that, in terms of the
One of the
workshop
things that I
training?
tell people in terms of workshop delivery is I'm a diverse candidate myself, so I've got a visual impairment, and I often find myself saying to the audience and apologizing almost for my learning support need. And since I've been working with inclusive recruiting, which we tell everybody, it's exhaustive. It's very exhausting to be consistently telling people about what your situation is. However, this has worked out to be an amazing tool for people, because what they've done in the workshops, whilst it's a challenge for me, I ask people actively to support my need by actually speaking, by not writing in the chat all of the time. And so the challenge of my visual impairment has actually turned into a bit of a tool to support and aid learning in the session. So whilst I call it a challenge, actually it's working to the benefit of what it is we deliver.
I guess it allows that openness for other individuals to, I guess, be comfortable in that space, right? And be themselves, and maybe also say, well, I can't do this, or I need, whatever, to just open up, which is great as well. It's creating
Most
that safe
definitely.
space, especially in those sort of training and workshops that we do, which is good. And so it leads us nicely onto our final question. Now that we've talked about sort of the challenges, I'd really like to know, obviously, what other organizations or candidates, what can they do in terms of EDI? Or if we talk about organizations, in fact, what can other organizations do to ensure they are creating a workplace where there is EDI and they're having that EDI lens there? Maybe give some of your top tips in terms of what they can do to ensure they are promoting, creating diversity, equity and inclusion in their organization.
Can I start with almost a starter for 10? The starter for 10 is to be conscious and not unconscious. It's actually be aware of your bias, be aware of your privilege, whatever level it is at, but be aware. We spend a lot of time, organizations spend a lot of time saying this unconscious bias, and I'm unconscious of it. It's like, well, actually, you're so unconscious that you're telling me. So what we're saying to them is be conscious. Write down a list of the things that you would naturally exclude, and it starts with you. So check yourself and then be fully aware and present in the process. That's one of my first tips.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, and I agree. I think not only with EDI, but just generally, when I talk about mindset with candidates' confidence, I always talk about, that self-awareness. Self-awareness is so strong. It can lead to so many things. Once you're aware of what you're saying or you're thinking or you're behaving, or what someone may have said to you and in what way, you can then create those actions forward to what you're saying, to then become aware and move forward in terms of that learning. So yeah, I totally agree. Before we move on, do you have any other tips, Daniel?
I guess it's be unapologetic as well. When you're being an ally, when you're being supportive, when you're looking at EDI, when you're looking at how you work, don't apologize for it. And I use myself as an example. I say that I often think I talk too much, or my challenges are too much. And it's like, why am I apologizing? If it's positive, ripple it out, share it with somebody if it's useful, and be unapologetic about it.
Thank you. Priya, would you like to give your top tips?
I've got a few actually. So yeah. I would say that the first thing is, if get uncomfortable. EDI is uncomfortable. Yeah. It shouldn't be palatable. It should be stuff that makes you, like Daniel said, you've got to look at yourself. You need to look at your biases. It's not, you don't have to go through it on your own. So, I can talk about it from a recruitment perspective of, if you are on a panel as the interviewers, you should have, there should be two of you. It shouldn't be one person making a decision, and you should both share your biases. Like, this is my bias, this is my bias. So you're both aware of each other's, so you are able to challenge each other. Yeah, that's something really simple that a lot of people just don't realize. That makes such a big difference. Like, you need to be challenged on the decisions that you're making, or why are you excluding someone, and have someone there to check you. It's really little things like, I'm sure this has happened for everyone at some point in their working career of, you have a team outing or a team day out, and you'll always have somebody in the team who never comes, and you'll have, you'll invite everybody, but somebody never comes all the time. And it becomes this, oh, there's no point inviting them, they never come. But has anybody actually taken a step back to understand why they're not coming? Assumptions are made as to the reasons why. And that person may never tell you the actual reason why, because it could be a number of different things that they don't feel comfortable saying to you. But actually, does it have to be outside of working hours? Do you have to do those things? Because you are excluding people the moment you go out of that. So they're really little things that, you can do as an organization yourself, and really start to understand if I'm excluding anyone, like Daniel said right at the beginning, and ensuring that you're including everyone. But it starts from the top down.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the exec level, the SLT level, if you don't have that knowledge in-house, that's fine. But let's go and get that knowledge. And if that is doing some reading on your own, or bringing some consultants in, or, our inclusive recruiting workshops or EDI foundations, or even someone as a consultant who you can dip in and out of to have a conversation with, who can help you along that journey, then get that advice.
Absolutely. I think it's key.
And reach out. Obviously we are an inclusive recruiting agency that specialise in EDI workshops, EDI consultancy and recruitment, but you can reach out to us, but there are other people as well that you can as well.
Absolutely.
But that training and education for me is key.
I think also, as you talked about that, I think what came to me is with some of the work that I'm doing at the moment in terms of planning for the candidate network manager, it comes to my mind that how many people, we talk about managers or just even colleagues, peers, if you sat down and write a list of people in your team, for example, how much do you know about them? And it's that key thing is, getting to know the people that you work with or the people that you manage, and being personable and having empathy and really understanding to know why they're doing certain things in certain ways. So for me, it's like with organizations, I think for me, it's like get to know your people, really know what they're all about, who they are, what they don't like, create that, safe space and a nice environment for them to be in, because at the end of the day, we're at work most of the time anyway. So it needs to be that environment whether you're working from home or in the office. It needs to be that safe space where people feel comfortable to excel in what they're doing and progress as well, and have open conversations with senior leadership team. So Dom. Oh, you're on mute again. Some top tips for organizations. What do you have for us?
Some top tips from organizations. How can I follow up from Daniel and Priya? I mean, Priya actually has stolen some of my lines that I had prepared. I think hitting the nail on the head, it's, educating the organization from the top down, precisely exactly what Priya said. It's about changing the culture, changing the, and having them understand they do have biases, whether they, no matter what, that they do have biases, and, support them in, in education of, in the EDI sphere, or, sort of, ideas of EDI. It's very important that businesses develop strategies and trainings for the teams, where they will, learn about EDI, understand EDI, and all the characteristics, looking at, all the biases and things like this. Also making sure that the organizations are making it easier for diverse candidates to apply and change some of the processes and applying processes. Not every diverse candidate will understand some of the application processes. If I go on some of the systems and I look at, how you need to apply for certain roles, it's really, really challenging. And, and having a clarity and understanding for everyone that, you know, of the process. And lastly, I think, you know, make sure that it's not a, you know, EDI is not a paper, you know, tick box exercise, making sure that, you know, we're learning that it's not, and making the you know, the organizations understand that it's probably not that difficult to introduce or employ a diverse candidate, but to retain them, that's where the challenge starts. And, you know, that's where you need to have a long, hard think about your organization, the structure, the people you've got in your organization within your teams, and how they will adjust for that person to feel included.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've given a lot of food for thought out there. So hopefully we'll have some people watching this and gaining some top tips there. I think for me, if I just as you speak, a few things came to mind as when I was doing the recruiter role is, and even now when I speak to candidates, one thing that really frustrates me, which is something that Priya touched on earlier, is the feedback. Really encouraging clients and organizations to give constructive feedback. Sometimes I know it's challenging to give, especially if you've got a really tight sort of, I don't know, you found two great individuals who you can't decide between, but most of the time you can give constructive feedback, and that can go a long way for that individual in terms of how they look for a new role or what they think about. So providing that constructive feedback, and also at the start of the process of the recruitment is, you know, ensuring that the hiring manager, the recruiter, whoever it is, the organization, has an open mind. Sometimes it's very rigid when they start asking questions, and they start saying, you know, they're asking questions and it's maybe too fast, or, you know, somebody doesn't understand it. And instead of testing somebody, how about just slowing down or asking the question in a different way, maybe? So having the openness of just being, you know, creating that ease, because what they should understand, and what I always talk about to candidates is, you know, don't feel pressured and you know, in those situations, because at the end of the day, it's a two-way process. And sometimes when you're looking for a job, you can get into the whole, oh, it's nerve-wracking. It is absolutely nerve-wracking. I hate doing it myself, but, you know, it's a two-way process. If you're not going to get that, I guess, that connection with the people that are recruiting you or your hiring manager, they may like you, but you may not like them at the end of the day. So it's creating that awareness as well for clients out there that, yeah, it's a candidate market. They need to create these sort of steps and put these in place so they are, you know, attracting the people that they want to attract in the right way. So yeah, I mean, that's it from me. I think we can probably talk about this for quite a long time, but sort of anything else to end with, or?
I think the only thing that I would end with is, you know, sort of going back to what you were saying, Haleema, is put yourself in the candidate's shoes. An interview is frightening for anyone. You know, before you've even gone in there, you know, yeah, you actually got anxiety, you're anxious, you're nervous. It's frightening. So to walk into a panel of 5 for, you know, a junior role doesn't make sense. Yeah. You know, you're increasing that candidate's likelihood of not performing to their best. Yeah. So really take a hard look at what you're asking for, but also put yourself in that candidate's shoes. You know, they've been preparing for this interview, etc. And if you've put that interview on a day where you've got loads of meetings and it's literally been crammed in for an hour, and you're just want it to get over and done with, what was the point? Yeah, it doesn't matter what that candidate does, they're just not going to impress you because your mindset isn't in the right place. Yeah, and you're ticking a box. You know, yeah. Inclusive recruiting or EDI within the recruitment process, or training for that matter, needs time. Yeah. You need to give it time. It's not as simple as I need a bum on a seat in 2 weeks and I want that to be a diverse candidate. It's not going to happen. Well, it can happen, but like we said, it will be a revolving door. Yeah, and they'll go. Yeah. It needs time. You need to give it the time it deserves, is what I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Daniel, did you have something to finish off with?
Yeah, I was just saying it's excitable. It sounds like as an organization, we know what our inclusive recruiting and foundation EDI workshops are all about. And if people are watching, it is we do teach on all of this. So we teach people about the sourcing and the recruiting and the interview process and feedback. for those candidates when they've not been successful. It's really important that we as an organization, if this is something that people are interested in, hit us up, follow us on our LinkedIn, because we're always posting really useful information about how to get the most out of interviews. We're always posting stuff about EDI. We're always posting really interesting stuff around inclusivity. So get in contact with us about the workshops, get in contact with us, follow us is the first thing I would say. And just make contact, because we are a relational organization. So the thing that's really exciting about the work that we do, everything that we've spoken about today, you can find in our EDI Foundation, our inclusive recruiting workshops, and then we do specialist talks on all sorts of EDI topics. So I think it's been invaluable today. I've really enjoyed the discussion, and we could be here all day, and I could go through probably about 6 hours of workshops.
That's fabulous. I'm really pleased that you enjoyed being here. Thank you. It's a pleasure having you all here. And like I say, to echo my end line, which Daniel's just stolen, is follow us on LinkedIn. If anyone's watching, you know, you can connect with any of us from the inclusive recruiting team. We'll be more than happy to speak to you and guide you and help you with whatever you may have moving forward, and especially myself in terms of supporting diverse candidate with your job search. You know, connect with me, let's have a chat. You know, it's as simple as that. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.